And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at. I'm Bill Graham. I'm the president of the Rotary Dare to Be Great Global eClub, and I declare this eClub meeting on 7 September 2024 to be open. Our topic for today is the result of several conferences I've attended in the last couple of weeks, where there's been a lot of discussion by teachers talking about the negatives of artificial intelligence on the education process. And in particular, pointing out that many students are misusing artificial intelligence, if you would, to bypass the learning process, to instead of going and doing research and writing papers and essays and things, they're just going and having AI do it, or turning in homework, generating homework. They're just having AI do that. So there's a movement in a lot of parts of the world to block students from being able to access artificial intelligence, or in some cases, even to block access of devices, of phones, cell phones or tablets in the classroom, because it's distracting from the teacher-driven order of education that is the typical process in most places. So that's what we want to talk about. And we want to talk about ways in which AI can be used productively to enhance education. That's what we want to talk about. Now, there are some that are going to be saying, well, wait a minute, AI, we want to get AI out of our lives. We have to be more human. We need to just be more human to human. Let's get rid of all this technology. And I can recall about 40 years ago, I was at an event sponsored by a major social equality promotion group. And it's a very big group here in the United States. And one of the leaders said that the biggest problem here is, to get back to humanity, we have to get rid of electricity. That light, the electric light bulb, is the cause of so many bad things in the world, because people are not going to sleep and waking up in their natural biological rhythm based on the sun going up and down. We would be people were so much better off when they lived in grass huts, and they lived according to the clock, to nature's clock. So we don't want to be in that discussion here. So we're going to discuss what can we do today with the tools that are available that will help people be prepared to have a better life. That's really what education's all about. That's what we're going to talk about. But we're going to talk about having a better life in the world that is, not the world that maybe some people wish was. So in the discussion, I ask you to please keep your remarks to that subject. And let's not get into wishful thinking or lamenting the course of nature or technology or whatever. So now I have a little bit of a presentation prepared, so I'll share my screen here in a minute on that. But the main thing that sort of kicked off the idea to have this be the focus of today's session was those discussions in those other conferences, where a lot of professors and teachers really spoke against. Oh, okay. Yes, I just allowed, if you want to record this meeting locally, you can. Well, I don't know if I have to do that individually for each of you, but Atia is doing that, which is a good idea, because if you recall, those of you who were on last week's meeting, my computer froze up, and so I still have not been able to reassemble the parts for the recording to get the recording out. Okay, so at any rate, here, in addition to the comments of these professors in these conferences, was an article in the MIT Technical Review, which said that across the board, educators were shifting and wanting to block AI from their students, but they wanted to use it for themselves to create quizzes, to grade quizzes, to plan lectures, and do all of those types of things to make life easier for the teacher. But they were not thinking about how AI might be able to help the learning process for the learners. And that's a little bit here what I want to talk about today, because I've been noting that on YouTube, there's a number of people that have been putting out videos of how they're leveraging AI for their own learning. And these are not necessarily saying, hey, I'm using it to improve my learning in a school environment. They're just improving their learning in general. They have a goal. They want to know something. They want to learn something. They want to be able to do something. And they're leveraging AI to help do that. So this is what we want to discuss today. Let me just share my screen here. Okay. Okay, so the title for today's session is that AI is likely to massively change education in the very near future. In the past 2 weeks, we talked about the speed with which AI and robotics is advancing so much faster than anybody imagined, to the point that when we look at AI, so much of what is possible, what is available right now, we didn't even imagine it could be available for the next 2 to 5 years in January. And this is a trend that's ongoing. In fact, last week's meeting, I showed a couple of videos, short videos showing the capabilities of robots that could talk and see and interact with humans and do things, and avatars that we could communicate and speak with intelligently. And I was surprised about 2 hours after that meeting ended, along came a brand new robot presentation. And I noticed that last month there was a robotics exposition in China in which they presented 27 humanoid robot types. So I was one of the ones. I said, robots, humanoid robots? No way in the next few years. But we see it's there. And it's interesting when GPT-2 was brought out in 2020, I think it was, or maybe 2021, that there was a paper signed by 2,700 expert scientists and engineers in the AI field, estimating how long did they think it would take to get to GPT-3. And they estimated the median, or whatever the consensus was, about 50 years. Well, GPT-3 came out 1 year after GPT-2. So we see they were off by 49 years. Or if we look at it by percent, they were off by, what is that, 96%? So we're just seeing that this stuff is going tremendously fast. Now, when we talk about education, one of the things that's really important that we grasp, and I don't think all educators have grasped this yet, but that the primary goal or purpose of education has shifted. Up until recently, the primary goal was to learn things, to learn math, to learn history, to remember dates, and to learn biology and all kinds of things like that. And today, it's less about whether you've learned those things, and more about, are you prepared to be a lifelong learner? Because the shelf life of knowledge is getting to be extremely short, and you've got to be in a position to be able to learn new stuff at any time in your life. And to do that, you've got to have confidence in your ability to do that. Uh, um, or as Fred Swaniker, the founder of the African Leadership University, pointed out, uh, we need less just-in-case education and more just-in-time education. And So it's less about specific subjects, and it's more about learning how to learn. If we have students leaving school that they did great. They got an A or a one, depending on where you are in the world, your grading system, in math and in chemistry and in other subjects, but they don't know how to learn. They're very good at taking whatever a teacher sent their way and being able to repeat it back, but they didn't really learn how to learn. That's a failure, because in a couple of years after coming out of school, if they don't know how to learn, if they haven't learned how to learn, they're going to be in deep, deep trouble. And we see in the United States here, we have a part of the country called the Rust Belt. This was an area of a lot of manufacturing of all kinds of items. And so many of those jobs have been moved overseas, or many have been upgraded. And we have a lot of, particularly men, who are doing mostly that kind of work. There's a huge problem with drugs and suicide. They call it, what is it? Uh, um, the word escapes me right now. Deaths of despair. That these people that were doing something for so many years in their life, and all of a sudden that ability to do that disappeared, and now they don't know what to do. And I can recall hearing an interview of a gentleman. He was a mechanic on airplanes, and who's going to come and take the job of somebody on airplanes? But his specialty was dealing with carburetors on the engines, and the engines don't have carburetors anymore. And his point was, hey, I got my education 40 years ago, and I am not going to learn fuel injection, which was at the time the thing that replaced the carburetor for him. I'm not going to have to relearn that. Or so many people feel, I was just not good at academics. I was just not good in school, and they don't think they can learn. And so the number one thing we have to look at is, when students are leaving school, have they learned how to learn anything? So no matter what gets thrown at them, they feel confident they'll be able to learn it very quickly. Okay, then this was the article in the MIT Technical Review. Many teachers see mostly negative implications. They fear students are going to misuse the AI to write essays or come up with ideas for projects, do research, and so forth. And they fear the students are going to miss out on the hard and focused thinking that builds creative reasoning skills. Well, do we really think that reading a book or two recommended by a library or a librarian or Google is better than reviewing and discussing a summary synthesized from hundreds of books, scientific papers, lectures, etc. on a subject? What constitutes here the creative reasoning skills? Is that thinking about an issue? Is that thinking about an issue in a structured way? And is the only way to do that you have to read physical books, or that you have to physically visit a library? Or is it more about looking and saying, oh, okay, here's the summary of that. What does it mean? and thinking about that. So if somebody's been assigned, hey, write an essay, what's involved? Doing some creative exploration. What's this? What do I need to be writing about? What's involved? Doing some research, synthesizing some information, formulating some hypotheses and theories, doing more research to confirm or um, void those the thinking on those, critical thinking and effectively communicating and things like this. So that is, so what is it that we really want out of that? Do we really want the student that they hand in a paper and that we say from this paper we can judge what their thinking was and the process that they took to get there? They may have gone in and said to the librarian, "Can you tell me what's important about this?" Or they go and interview one person. The bottom line is we want to know, are they able to think critically and creatively? Can they formulate hypotheses and theories? Do they know how to define research goals? Can they come up with instructions to, whether they're talking to the librarian or they're talking to an AI, to say, hey, I need to know this. I need to find this. Where can I find it? How can I find it? Do they know how to evaluate the results that they get? Uh, that's the critical thinking aspect. Are they doing effective follow-up research or asking questions? Do they know how to develop effective communications? Do they know how to define the goals that they want to achieve with that communication? Do they know how to effectively structure effective communications? Can they evaluate their drafts to say, is this going to accomplish the goal? The bottom line is that we're looking at is do they know how to learn? Do they know how to think creatively and critically? Do we agree that's what the goal of the education should primarily be? Please, I've been talking too long. I need some other voices here.
Yeah, I mean, learning to learn is definitely, metacognition, definitely something that needs to be part of the, I don't know, curriculum, but definitely what you need to be able to do to be independent of the school system.
Yeah, because when we think we're in that school system for maybe 12 years or 16 years, or in a few cases a little bit more than 16 years, but we're going to live hopefully for 70, 80 years. So and we don't turn our brains off when the formal education stops, hopefully. Okay. So
Well,
right now,
I wanted to just if that's okay, I just wrote something as you were talking there, Bill. I just wrote something in the chat, so I'm going to read that because that doesn't show up obviously in the video. So I wrote, I actually went to school as an electronics technology for electronics technology as a technologist, but that was back in the early 1990s. So the information I got from school at that time, of course, was important, but it really only with regard to the fundamentals of understanding how electronic systems work, sort of at the physics level, and a lot of the practical applications for the fundamentals of how electronic systems work. But of course, they've advanced so far in the past 30 years that the knowledge I got in the early 1990s is so far out of date that I needed to rethink sort of my career path. And what I learned through life experience was that it's not the actual it's not the actual technologies that matter. It's how we're using those technologies. And it's the application of those technologies and for what purpose.
mm-hmm.
So the technologies are negative. Technologies themselves are always neutral. And I give the example of a baseball bat all the time. A baseball bat can be used to play a baseball game. It can be used to have fun. It can be used for great community events that we have a lot of fun with, sports, right? It can also be used to bash somebody's brain in and kill them, right? It's only a tool. And AI is the same. It's a tool. It really depends on how we use it, who is using it, and for what purpose. What is our goal of using this particular tool? And that's sort of the fundamental where I've taken my career as an electronics technologist, understanding electronics and technology and all of these tools we're building now, and saying, how do we apply it in a way that maximizes the benefits to humanity and to the environment?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, thank you. Naveed, you want to add something?
Thank you very much. I personally feel that the requirement stays the constant, and the methods keeps changing. It may be a tool, it may be a technology. The way we handle it, that changes. But prior thing is that we must have the understanding of the requirement which humans need, although they are variable also. But by and large, they stay the constant. And education is definitely one of the requirements. And that is to enable a person to do whatever he or she wants. Presently, unnecessarily, the focus has been shifted to technology rather the requirement. And another thing is that when we talk of the requirement, we do understand why we have to use it and to what extent we have to use it. Because for anyone who is developing a technology, he or she has a different kind of requirement. And who is doing just as a practitioner or operator, they have a different kind of requirement. We must keep these things in view while designing or planning for improving the education. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Actually, I think here one of the things, and I don't know if you were on the call when I mentioned Fred Swaniker talking about the difference between just-in-case knowledge or education and just-in-time knowledge. I can recall when I think it was 7th grade, and we had algebra, and we're learning quadratic equations and a whole bunch of other stuff like that. And I have to say, I don't think I've ever used any of that stuff in the rest of my life. And I've been involved in a lot of different fields and technology. I think here something that you learn much later that's considered to be more advanced is when we get into statistics and probability. Now, that's something here that I think most people use almost every day. If you just listen to the news and they say something about a percent, or they say something about a probability, to understand what that means. But I think the bottom line here is that we're recognizing the importance that people be creative and critical thinkers, that they be problem solvers, and that requires the ability to deal with new situations and information all the time. And while we have in our school system, we've got subjects like math and biology and chemistry and history and all of these things, there's no subject that we take that's called learn to learn, how to learn to learn. And that, I think, is part of the problem is that we sort of say, well, you know, in the process of learning the math or learning the history, you're doing some practice, so you're probably learning how to learn, but we don't know how well, because most of our school systems say, hey, if you got 70% right, you're okay, you can move on to the next item. So we don't really know, we don't really evaluate how well our students are learning how to learn. So when they leave school, we really don't know from one to the next. We know the outputs they created. We like those outputs. Oh, that was a great essay that you wrote there, or report. But we don't know what was their thinking process as they went through the process of creating that. So Ian, you want to add something?
Yeah, when I was about 18, somebody gave me a riddle, and I solved that with mathematics. because you know, and I was able to give the whole number. What's it in the negative fractional value as well, and we just don't have the culture of doing that. That it's like, you know, it's like, you know, it's like the mathematics is there in the school, the history is there in the school. And I mean, history is this great thing for, you know, learning how not to repeat it. It's like, you know, how do people react in certain situations? And the current election, you know, what effect does that, you know, if you could look back through history, you would see something similar happening in, you know, previous civilizations.
You know, it's a very interesting point that you bring up the history example, because the question is what percentage of students go through and all they've done is memorize that on a certain date something happened, and there's no real thought to be given of what does that mean, or what can I draw from that on conclusions. So, but the idea to say, okay, I can use math. I had a lot of problems in school because, you know, the teacher would always call up students to go, a handful of students to go to the blackboard and give an example, and to do it on the blackboard for the rest of the class to watch. And they always wanted to see in the math, especially, did you do all the steps? Did you go through a process and do all the steps? You know, they wanted us to convert apples and oranges into X's and Y's. And my problem is I could visualize the apples and oranges. So I would always convert the X's and Y's into something like apples and oranges, and I just knew the answer. So I would just go up on a board and write down the answer.
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, early on in the math class, you know, we started with X's, and he gave us a problem to solve with Y's in it. Okay. And what we found was that everybody converted, you know, said let X equal, let Y equal X, solve the problem with X, and then converted it back to Y, when we could have done the whole thing with a Y. And as you're saying, you could have done this thing, you could have made a cursive notation that meant apple, and a circle that meant orange, and do it like that, and have that in the equation all the way down.
Yeah, I think also, if we take a look today, we have calculators, right? So the question is here, teachers, when calculators first came out, there was a strong effort on the part of teachers to keep them out of the hands of students. But in reality here, in life, if you're one of those people that says, "Oh, give me a minute, I'll think it out in my head, or I'll on a piece of paper," your boss is going to sit there and say, "Look, either you give me the answer in less than a minute, use a calculator. I don't care whether you did it in your head or you did a calculator. In fact, I trust the calculator a little more than your head."
I mean, in ancient times, there was a big argument in Greece over converting from poetry to prose, because how were you going to remember it if it wasn't in poetic form?
Right. So the main thing we're looking at here is, if we're saying, look, the most important thing is that a person leaving the school system has the knowledge and skills to be able to learn anything. Today here, I can tell you my approach is, I don't care what it is. If I'm not asking ChatGPT, I'm going and taking a look in YouTube, because there's nothing that you can't find a video on how to fix or do or explain. And so the question here is, if that's a good way to get answers, as long as you are realizing that just like when you go out into Times Square in New York City and ask a passerby something, you know, you have to take it with a grain of salt, because you don't know whether that person has any qualifications to answer it. You know, how often do you go and ask somebody, where is something? And then they say, well, I don't know. I'm a tourist. I'm not from here. So, you know, we need that critical thinking to go with it. So, but we don't have a process. But what if we could evaluate in detail most of the thought processes, what's going on in the heads of students as they go through the learning process. Because if we could do that, we could help improve their thinking. We could help improve how they approach problems. But as long as we're only looking at the results, we look at the essay. Was it a good essay? Was it not a good essay? We have no ability to do that. And therefore, as long as the results are okay, we're just passing them on. Naveed, yes, please.
One point we need to understand is that presently we are trying to convince people that STEM is the basis of everything. To me, life minus humanity is equal to STEM. That you are making to think in the scientific, in technology, in the engineering and management, mathematics terms. There is no humanity which is involved. Whatever you are saying, that is more related that how humans think. And it is important to know that how an engine works, but it is also important to know how those who are inventing these engines, what are their thinking process? How do they develop the mathematical thinking? Like you were mentioning about the calculator, one must understand the difference between computing and calculation. At what occasion you have to calculate and when you are required to compute these things. The fundamental idea that must be hammered, that must become the second nature. And because in the end, it is not what is the tension which makes a difference. It is the unintentional competence that matters in the human being. We must be working on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's a good point, because do we need to study how an engine works, or do we just need to know how we can go about finding out how an engine works if we need that? In other words, if we're looking at just-in-time knowledge, it's much more valuable because there's many kinds of engines and the types of engines change all the time. That we know how to get the answers we're looking for is much more important than knowing things. And that applies equally to knowing here, why was Socrates killed? I don't think there's a lot of people that realize that one of the reasons Socrates was killed, was forced to kill himself, was because he was against democracy. He thought democracy was a terrible idea, and it was the democratic forces of Athens that called for his death, because he was speaking out against the leaders of the democratic movements. Okay, so, but for the purpose for us right now, we're looking and saying, hey, if our main goal is to turn people out that are prepared to be effective, successful, lifelong learners, that is what we're really trying to do, is see how do they approach creativity? How do they approach critical thinking? How do they do it? Do they have any process? How do they approach researching things and evaluating things? And so the question is here, how can AI help us with that? So what if we stopped trying to stop AI from doing the research and the writing for the students? Let the AI do the research. Let the AI do the writing. You know, Rembrandt is one of the most famous painters. I think most people would agree that he's one of the most famous painters. You know, he hardly ever painted anything. He had all his assistants doing the painting. He would just have the vision, the idea, and he would communicate to his assistants, this is what I want you to put onto canvas. And then he would just come in and do the final touch-ups on the end to tweak it to really be exactly what he wanted. So is the value of the education doing the research, or is the value in knowing what you want researched, how you want it researched, where you want it researched, and why you want it researched? the same goes for the writing. Is it the mechanics of doing the writing that are important, or is it understanding what you're trying to communicate to who, and to being able to evaluate whether something is likely to be an effective communication tool? So if we go and have the AI doing all that, and then we put the student and say, "Hey, student, you're in charge. You need to guide uh, um, the AI in all of these efforts." I think it's sort of like the car. You know, we used to get everywhere by walking or by taking riding a horse or whatever. And but when you're walking, you just, you know, that's doing it. Is the value the walking, or is it you're trying to get somewhere? So when you drive a car, is that cheating because you didn't walk yourself? Maybe if the purpose is the exercise, okay. But if the purpose is to get to a destination, I would say it's not cheating because you guided the tool to get you to that result. So the idea is, if we're looking at research, the student would have to formulate what it is that they're wanting the AI to research. They have to be able to formulate what purpose. They need to give any comments as to how and where, and the particular goals of research. The AI could then evaluate and report on how well the student is doing on effectively communicating how the research should be done, where it should be done, and so forth. In other words, does the human understand the research and the goals and all of those things, which I think is 10 times more important than going and saying, now I'm going to be the one who's going to go and pull the books out of the shelf and read through to try to find out the particular points. And the AI could actually then go and coach the student on how to improve your approach to doing the research. It could coach the student on how to communicate better what to do. Now, I did an experiment with this with ChatGPT. I went in and I gave a prompt to ChatGPT, and I said, look, I want you to evaluate my prompts and tell me where my prompt has weaknesses and could be improved, because it's got ambiguities in there, or maybe it didn't specify particular aspects. So I told it to do that, and then I gave it a prompt, and I said, look, tell me the causes of the American Revolution, and who was behind those causes, what individuals, and so forth. And I went through about 7 exchanges where it said, well, you didn't specify the time. Do you want me to just say the immediate causes, or do you want me to say the causes of the causes? Do you want me to limit it only to the political figures, or do you want me to limit to anybody who had influence, the causal influence on creating a revolution? And we went through this process, and to get to a prompt that didn't have any ambiguities, was very clear on what it was looking for, and so forth. And so then I had it go and say, now summarize for me, out of all those exchanges we went through, summarize the learning points. In other words, what were the main weaknesses that I started off with? What were the categories of the types of changes that improved my request, and lessons learned, if you would, and advice on how on the next time round I can do better with fewer tries to getting an effective prompt. So I probably should pull all that out, put it in a Google Doc, because I think looking at the process and looking at the depth of understanding of what it the weaknesses that it pointed out, and the categories, and if I did this, how much it could improve the quality of the research that would be being done. Naveed, did you want to add something there, or was that?
Yes, I have 2 points to make. One is that we traditionally we are following the problem solving domain. We must upgrade it to problem resolving grade. That problem must not be solved, it must be resolved. So nobody should else has to face that situation again, any new generation. Second point is that we are more focused toward the assessment of things. It must be, we must have some framework, some parameters to realistically finding out that what value has been added during our learning process. So evaluation should be the key word rather assessing of the thing, which is very less yielding and that is not going to improve anything. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. No, I actually here, I think that's very true. As I pointed out, the lessons learned by going through. In other words, as I mentioned, we do not have a formal class usually on learning how to learn. But I think there's that saying, we learn by hearing, we learn better by reading, we learn even better by observing, and we learn best by doing. And by actually, as we are trying to formulate the process, because when you're looking at creating prompts, whether it's to tell the librarian or to tell anybody, when we're trying to formulate our prompts there to say what to do, or even for ourselves, just to say, let me make a to-do list here of how I should approach this problem. Doing that is we're going through a process, and the ability of the AI to observe us going through the process. We're not 100% as far to be able to actually record the brain waves, so the things that were going on inside your head as you did that. But as you formulate, make your to-do list or make your prompt to an AI or something else, that it's able to go and see how did you navigate fixing, improving the quality of the plans, improving the quality of the prompts. That the as I said, if I should publish that, because it's really amazing here as it came through with the instructions or the lessons learned to be able to prove how I approach developing prompts. And I could literally take it and say, okay, now the next prompt, hey, did I improve in the way I approached creating the prompts? I can actually ask it to do that. Because, well, let me go on to the next part here. Once I did a prompt and it did some research, the next question is, well, what did I do with that research? Did I review it critically? Did I have follow-up questions? Did I ask all the questions, the follow-up questions that would be meaningful? And I actually told it to review its own answer and come up with all the follow-on questions it thought would meaningfully improve the understanding of the subject area. And it came back with that whole list. And then I told it, now forget you just showed me that. And I'm going to give you my follow-on questions here. And I want you, AI, to see if there was something here that I probably should have asked and did not. Maybe to verify, was this accurate or that accurate, or it sounds unrealistic, or because I need to know, is this item related to something else? Please judge the question of my follow-on prompts in their own right, similar to doing any prompt, but also reviewing to understand, did I really critically think about the response that you gave me the last time? And did I leave any critical questions out that would help me deepen the understanding of what you responded based on what I told you my original goal was of why I'm doing this in the first place? So it would be able to then create a report where it would be able to say, okay, when you, in critically thinking about my response, you did very well on these aspects, but you didn't do so well on those aspects. You didn't ask any follow-ups on this. You didn't confirm that, so it gets me thinking about it, and it could do it in a way where it says, well, what do you think? Is there anything else you think you maybe should be asking me about to deepen the understanding or whatever? So it causes me to go back and critically look again and think, gee, did I miss something? But the idea here is at the end of the day, it's the process of having me look at these some materials and drawing out conclusions, asking in-depth questions or follow-up questions. And then it could coach me on improving so that I miss fewer important things. Or maybe it says you asked a lot of follow-on questions that don't add any value. And so that you should look more carefully on what is your intention? Why are you asking a particular follow-on question? So the bottom line is between these two aspects related to research here, what we're really doing is it doesn't matter what the subject is. What we're really thinking is how do I think about what's important about this subject? What do I want to follow up on? And we could have put in a piece in here on the formulating of hypotheses and theories out of some of the responses, and then drilling down on to either confirm or reject any of those theories or hypotheses. So the idea here is what this is doing is this is helping that student, that individual student, improve the way they think about situations, improving the way they seek out further understanding and knowledge about something, which in the end of the day is critical, is critical for problem solving, and is truly critical for becoming a lifelong learner. Because when you come up against something and say, I need to know this, I need to understand this, the first thing you got to do is be able to clearly state what is it you're trying to learn and why are you trying to learn it, and then approach saying, okay, how do I learn that? I mean, we could add it in here, a section of saying, okay, figuring out where do I go to go and find this information? Do I want to limit this to peer-reviewed papers? Do I want to go to books? Do I want to interview certain people? Do I want to communicate with some human experts on these things? That could be in here as well. Comments on this approach? Do you think this approach of doing it with the AI, and in the process of having the AI be able to evaluate your thinking, evaluate your approach, and coaching you on it, is this something where AI could really contribute to you becoming much, much better at learning in general and problem solving? Please. Or did I do just a bad job and confused you all?
No, so can you hear me, Bill?
Yes, can hear you.
Yeah. So it would be like having your own personal scholar to guide you in whatever you wanted to know about. So obviously, I can see why there's resistance amongst educators, because it takes out their whole field.
Well, I think here, if the educator is saying, hey, I'm assigning an essay, I want you to do an essay, I want you to go out, dig up information about this subject and write an essay on it, that's something they usually just assign. So the fact that there's another side of this whole thing, and that is whether or not that we need the teacher at all,
There's
That's a
There's
different subject.
there's a social aspect to it because access to the best education depends on finances. And you know, this opens up the best education to everybody.
Yeah, because what you're really doing is you're uh, processing this how to learn in your own head.
Yeah.
Because you're the one that's trying to state your understanding of the problem. You're the one who's trying to formulate and understand how you can approach the problem.
That is also, I think, even the elite private schools would be interested because, you know, there are students who have access to the most expensive education, but they still don't learn how to think. So, you know, this could fine tune their skills. So, you know, I think it's important not to eliminate the teacher, um, but you know, I think there's a place. It's suitable for all levels. You know, so the poorest child in the poorest village in Ghana could have an equal education to somebody from an elite school in the UK. And someone who's failing in an elite school because they don't have the critical thinking necessary, would be able to train themselves or be helped to train themselves and achieve a higher level than they would otherwise.
Yeah, and what we're really talking about here, it's learning how to learn through practice.
Yeah.
Because you are practicing with the AI, and the AI is coaching you and pointing out the weaknesses and how you're approaching it and helping you overcome those. Ian, please, yes.
Yeah. The other thing too is the educational bias. I mean, if you go to one of the Ivy League, well, I don't even call them Ivy League schools, but if you go to the what was once called the public schools in England, what you find there is that there's an awful emphasis on the classics, on how to govern people based on the history of the Greek and Roman empires, which kind of skews things. And I think, the AI would be a good way to bring that back in a certain way, and also to make that available to more people so that I think what I said in an essay at one stage was, you're in a lot of the elite schools, what you're learning is, how to manipulate the plebs. If the plebs knew a little bit more about how they're being manipulated, that would be good too.
Yeah. Well, the one thing to keep in mind here, we're not talking about what the prompts you created is about what you're learning. So this can be applied to anything. This can be applied to you writing a paper, coming up with a paper on how to collaborate effectively in a team. It could be writing a paper about some chemical process. You can use it for literally anything. You can use it to describe historical events. So this is not about what it is that the learning is about. What it is, though, is practice, a formal practice of the learning process that you're going through to learn whatever that other thing is that you're trying to learn. Yes, Lloyd.
Yeah, so I really like this discussion today, and I'm just thinking around what you said earlier about the teachers sort of getting their backs against the wall on this because they think, oh, well, just that students are teaching and they're not learning because they just use the AI and they submit whatever their homework or whatever. I'm just thinking around these processes of learning how to learn and the role of the teacher. And I think there is a more fundamental role of the teacher in terms of that human connection, but also in the teacher evaluating whether the student has actually learned what they submitted, for instance, by sort of testing them in a way that's more geared toward oral presentations, so that they can evaluate whether they've actually learned what it is they have learned by removing those technologies once they have used them, and then asking them about what they've just said that they learned, and allowing them that opportunity to explain it orally, let's say before a class.
Yeah.
And so the classroom of today could be transformed in a way where the AI tools could still be used, but then the classroom experience becomes something where the student is actually trying to recall what it is they have actually learned, and then relate that to the rest of the class and to the teacher.
Yes, that's a really good, valid point. Now, I had originally thought to include it here, but did not. And that is that in discussing with the ChatGPT of what AI can do to improve the outcomes and so forth, we see so much of the evaluation today is done with multiple choice tests. Why? Because they're very easy to grade and it's making life easier for the teacher. But we could say, let's make everything an essay answer. Explain to me, write a paragraph on this or that. But then if the question is here, we're asking somebody about some biological situation, and some people write very clearly and some people write very convolutedly. The biology teacher, should they only pay attention to, well, did he get it right? Did the student get the biological point correct, even if they explained it in a very convoluted way? Because their goal is, do you understand the biology, not whether or not you are a great communicator. But that we can't do that because of the time. Just like with this here, to say, okay, have you learned how to be an effective thinker? Which is what this is about. It's hard to do that in a group. You've really got to look in, because we're talking about what's going on inside each individual's head, is what we're trying to judge here. And AI gives us that capability because we can take 50 students and just do them all in parallel, because each one is doing it individually. Well, as far as the assessment goes, to say, okay, but did you learn what caused the American Revolution here? Because that's what your essay is supposed to be about. That 100% right. The conclusion was, hey, okay, you know what? Have the student do it verbally. In France, when you're at the college level and you go for your exams, you've got a panel of professors up there, and they verbally drill you to your understanding of the subject matter, to determine whether or not you've mastered it or not. So, but now you can do that with AI. The AI can ask you the questions and determine from your answers how well you understand the subject matter, and then it could actually hear if it's worried that maybe your communication skills are in the way of being able to judge how well you really understand the subject, that it can ask follow-up questions and drill down to see, okay, were you just giving a rote answer because you read it somewheres, or do you really understand that? And it came back with how it would be able to go and do the verbal assessment. So, you can't copy an essay and just get by that way. And think of it today, how many people, especially when you get into secondary school and post-secondary school, how many students pay other students to write their essays for them and submit the work? And we are just judging it because we got a piece of paper, but that doesn't really tell us what's going on with that particular student. So on the one hand, we have the ability for the AI here to help you learn whatever the subject was, but in the process of helping you improve your learning process, how you approach learning materials and so forth. So we get a two-for, if you would, in the process of that. let me move on here. I just wanted this next one here. I've got a big write-up, but I didn't have a chance to copy it over here. In the writing side, where you get into the question of, okay, did the student really think about who their audience was? Did they think about what the takeaways that they wanted their audience to have out of whatever they're communicating? Did they think about the message? And did they think about the motivational construct to make sure that the reader will continue to read their whole paper and not give up after the first few paragraphs? So you actually, even though the AI is giving drafts, how did you approach evaluating those drafts? Or how did you approach the giving the instructions for what you wanted written? And so it has a very similar thing. Again, you can get the report. How well does this student understand the process of creating a communication? And how well did and then coaching the student to be better at how they approach developing a communication, a paper, or whatever. So we see a parallel here on that. So the basic thing that we're doing is we're saying, yes, you're learning whatever you're supposed to be learning. That's great. But in the process, you're learning how to approach things. You're learning how to be a better learner. You're a better learner, but a better problem solver as well. And how did the student, did they do what they needed to be doing in terms of the prompt, in terms of critically evaluating whatever the results that they're getting and so forth? In other words, we're looking, how did the student think? So at any rate, so, and as I said here, as Lloyd pointed out, this can go and apply to the evaluation, because one of the things is that the teachers are saying, but the student can cheat. They can bypass the learning process. So how do I know if they're learning? The AI can help them in that, because it can confirm how much they really comprehend and know about whatever it is they were supposed to be learning. Okay, and so in this way, what we've got is the students are learning effectively use all resources to achieve the goal and are becoming prepared to be effective, independent, lifelong learners. Now, one thing we have to keep in mind here is students are going to eventually leave school, and many of them are going to want for a job. And we're not going to talk about whether there's going to be any jobs left, but for now, based on the way things are now, they're going out there and they want to work for somebody. And the problem is if you've not learned to most effectively use all the resources that are out there to be able to be most productive in accomplishing whatever an employer wants you to accomplish, you're not going to get hired, or you're not going to keep the job. So to go and say, no, I'm gonna restrict you so you don't have access to the most productive tools, because I'm afraid you're going to use those to bypass some manual learning process or humanistic learning process, is crippling those people, because they're not going to be able to compete for a job where the employer is looking at productivity. Whether if you're supposed to be coming up with creative ideas, that's what the productivity is. Are you good at coming up with creative ideas? If it's about doing research, it's about or it's about guiding people. Whatever it is, the productivity is the name of the game. And if we're saying, no, we're keeping you away from the most productive tools because we're afraid you're going to use those productive tools to be super productive in the education process, that's really not doing what we as a society need. Okay, so that was pretty much what I wanted to do in the formal part here. But do we see how we can create and it doesn't take 1,000. We don't need 1,000 educators all creating the prompts that guide artificial intelligence in guiding the learners in how to learn effectively. We need a few that can create those prompts, and then and they can guide the students through the process. So, anybody's summary thoughts on this approach to, if we package this and make it available? Yes, Joan. Hi.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So to create an effective, I agree with you, by the way, that AI is here to stay. So to disregard it is not looking to the future. So right now I'm creating a certification program for climate smart agriculture. Okay. And I think that AI plays an important role in research skills and the hard skills. But there's a lot of personal skills that needs to. So I guess if you're creating a curriculum, and I'm very aware of this, is to create a hybrid situation. Number one, where the communication is strong, because correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an expert, I'm asking. AI to me, I'm a more of a creative kind of person, you know, that way. But AI is a technical side, very hard driven, very fact oriented, that sort of thing. But if you're developing projects in community, developing relationships, communication skills, personal skills, that sort of thing is equally important. So would you recommend then, if somebody like me developing a complete curriculum, would do a hybrid? That's number one question. And number two is, years ago, Microsoft had a problem with people who were studying MCSE, Microsoft Systems Engineering certification, which I was heavily involved with in schools that offered it. And there were lots of people who would pay someone to actually write the exam for them. So what Microsoft did to combat that situation, they did lots of things, but I'm talking about when I was involved, is that they would, instead of asking you the right or wrong questions or how to explain something, is they would pose a problem and you had to solve it. And then there was a little bit of an interview after that to see if it was actually you that did it. So I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, that's very similar to what Lloyd was referring to, the idea that AI, because it can verbally on the spot, it's not something that you can prepare somewhere else, ask you all kinds of random questions intended to understand what you understand about the subject. How well do you comprehend what you're talking about? And it can really help us in that in depth. But as far as the idea of the soft skills, there are books, all kinds of books out there, how to work well with others. There that give you guidance on saying, you know, look for these things, look for people that are doing this all the time, and it's a sign here that they're, you know, they're not open. So one of the things AI can actually do is it can create simulations. You know, when we go out there and a pilot is training a commercial pilot, we put them in a simulator. First, we maybe give them some theoretical stuff, and then we put them in a simulator, and we put them through flying through turbulence, going and landing with side winds, and all these scenarios that could possibly come up. Well, we can in AI actually create all those scenarios for different kinds of people, all the different kinds of people that you might encounter. We do that. We actually have a project that we've been talking about for diplomats at the UN to be able to help them understand whatever the issue, the topic that their committee is going to be discussing, and their countries have positions. Their countries say, we want this kind of a resolution, or we want that included or that not included, and so forth. And then to be able to go and look at the individuals that are representing other countries and looking at the positions of those other countries and figuring out strategies. How are you going to get these other people? Now they're people. So we have to remember, we think of AI very technically. Do you know
Yeah.
AI has not only beat the best Go players and the best chess players, it's also beat the best poker players. Now, poker
Oh,
is all
wow.
about bluffing and things like that. It is able to read human emotions better than the average human can, and therefore be able to better judge when somebody's bluffing by how much they're bluffing and so forth.
So
And
you can use AI for those other skills as well, is what you're saying.
absolutely, you can use it for anything. You
Okay,
can use it to train empathy. If you're going to
right.
become a doctor, one of the courses you take along the way is deals with
Yeah.
your bedside manner and so forth. And they say, you know, this is important. Pay attention to this. These are the kinds of things that the patients react best to if you present things in this manner and that manner. So we're trying to teach those, and you can we can actually put students in a situation where there's 4 or 5 other AIs, each simulating a different player, and put them into where they've got to, as a group, come up with answers, or where they have to lead a group and learn how to motivate a group. And the other AI, some of them will be intentionally being troublesome and or being disrespectful. And how do you deal with those? How do you overcome those scenarios? And it goes so far as in these video games. There's video games, you know, where shoot them up and you're chasing somebody down the road, and there are passerbys that are in most games. They're just figures it's just like a building on the side of the road, but it's a human figure that's there. And some of the newest games that you can actually stop and hold a conversation with any of these people. And the thing about it is the game itself didn't know what you're wanting to talk about. You can literally talk about anything. So we can simulate all of these various situations, because we have to remember AI has nothing to do with the word intelligence. This is one of the biggest misnomers that we have out there, that we call this thing artificial intelligence. What it is, it's just, if you want, we could call it intelligent retrieval, because we're taking the knowledge and skills and experience of a single human. It's not comparing it to machine intelligence. It's comparing it to the collective experiences and skills of a million other humans, and finding out which of those actions or statements of all those millions of humans led to the best outcomes in that particular situation that you're in when you're seeking the answer, if you would. And so this is why.
So if someone is developing curriculum, how do they do the AI side of it? Like,
The way I would do it is I would ask AI, how do I do it? In
okay.
other words, I would go.
Because I mean, the reason I'm asking is, for example, there's ChatGPT, and I'd be cautious about using that because you have to validate the information,
Absolutely,
obviously,
always.
right? So people say, "Oh, I use ChatGPT." I said, "Well, yes, it can give you an outline and it can give you that, but you still have to review and validate."
And
So,
excuse me if I could, because just for the others, what you just gave me a great in on this, and that is, as we were discussing here, the process before is what I had is, when I did the experiment, is I had ChatGPT give me an answer, and then I had it review its own answer, and to identify where are points that need to be confirmed, even if the ChatGPT already says, I know that's true, but that it's important that the human still take the step to
yeah,
evaluate that the ChatGPT can evaluate whether the human remembered to check that
right,
out,
right.
and train the human on how to be think critically about the responses it gets, and how to do the appropriate follow-ups to confirm certain things if they're doubtful. So
That's
that
helpful to me because that would make my life easy, because every time I read through a paragraph, oh, I write that down. I better check that. I better check that.
there are ways to formulate your original prompt that greatly reduce inaccuracies, And then the manner of coming up, or you can actually use, if you're using agent technology, you can go out and have Genesis or Claude review the answers from ChatGPT, in which they're approaching it differently, and very often they'll point out the weaknesses. So we're getting down to the state right now that most professionals that are using these tools almost never encounter inaccurate information. The inaccuracies are so small now, because we're putting measures in to ensure the quality of the responses. Now, keep in mind, it's still, because it's going out to other information, we need to go out and make sure that the sources of the information that it's pulling answers from, that we qualify those. For example, there's on the research, there's several of the custom GPTs that restrict the searching for the answers to only peer-reviewed academic papers. And there's millions of them out there, but there's still, by reducing that to that, and then being able to go out, because a lot of peer-reviewed papers also have comments from people that disagree with certain aspects of those papers, that it's able to pull on those things as well. So, but again, it's getting that the students, we're trying to get students to understand the importance that they're the ones guiding the AI. They're the ones that have to review the content. Rembrandt, as I said, had most of his painting was done by his assistants, but in the end of the day, he put his name on it, and he was still responsible for the final result.
Right.
And so I think that's the way students have to look at it and say, hey, these are tools, but because of this weakness or that weakness, I need to do certain things to validate the content, or to ensure that I'm on the right track. But by the way, curriculum building is something here that it's actually very good at. Let me see here. I don't know. Let me stop sharing this. And let me. Okay, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'll give it a try to see if I can actually bring up ChatGPT. Okay, we'll go. Now, I see we have a lot more people on the call here. So I want to hear from more people. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this, by the way, okay, now I know where it is. So let me go back and try again. This, by the way, is something I asked for a list of all the skills that you normally are expected to learn in 4th grade math. And so it came up with this: understanding place value, reading and writing numbers, comparing and ordering, rounding numbers, understanding and using the number line, adding multi-digit numbers, subtracting multi-digit numbers, and it goes on and on and on. Long division, equivalent fractions, simplifying fractions, and it goes up to 54 points. So it actually here, though, earlier I'd said there's 140 skills that one needs to master in 4th grade in math, and it does that for each of the different things. So what that does is, now if I know these are the things that have to be mastered, and I can come up and say, okay, ChatGPT, find a way to qualify to make sure that each person has truly mastered each one of those items before it goes on to any item that's dependent on your having mastered that. And then I can ask it to actually manage the person's progress, the student's progress as they go from point to point to point. And it basically would build Khan Academy for me. So I think I can show you as well.
It look like I'd like to have your side panel.
So this is going through AI as a guide and monitor of the learning process. I had to write multiple versions of this. Benefits of this: more accurate understanding of student progress, deeper critical thinking, personalized feedback, reduction of cheating and shortcutting, interactive approach to assessment. It gave me all this to very simple prompts. Here, write a 600-word paper that is, let me just see if I can put this down here. Focusing solely on the AI aspect, starting with the educators' fears regarding AI reducing learning to AI guiding, monitoring, and reporting on students' learning methods, processes, and engagement. Because in addition to being able to go and report on how well your learning progress is and how well you're learning how to learn, it can also go and report on your degree of engagement. And it can actually report on whether it thinks you're enthusiastically approaching the learning process or you're just doing the minimum and going through the methods. So what it's able to come up with on these things is generating enthusiasm. If you're not using it, then you really should. It's just as a way for yourself on your own thinking of how to approach anything you're thinking of approaching. Just have a discussion, but it's got to be a discussion. It's not a question and an answer, and that's the answer, and it's all done. It's a discussion going back and forth that really promoting curiosity. That it's great. It can really help users improve their curiosity to things based on the way they ask questions and the way it guides it. So it's like that personal teacher one-on-one who's reacting to that individual learner's
And like $90 was
thinking level.
delivery, but the insurance didn't cover. So
Hold on.
that came all the way from.
Somebody is got some talking going on in the background there.
Shut your mic off, please.
Kurt, do you want to add something to what we've been talking about?
Well, I've been doing this. I haven't been using ChatGPT except for the last week and a half a lot. And it is working wonders. And like you said, the biggest and the most important thing is that we begin to talk like as if this is the genius that we wanted to be able to answer all our questions, because it has all the facts of history and our society and societies, and like writing a book with the way that Hans Christian Andersen wrote about this story that I want you to write. Now, how does it do it? Well, then I go about and say, look, I want more indigenous wisdom in it. I want more idea about the climate being able to be affected in the positive ways, and so on and so forth. And what does it do? It starts to design this story. And then I can even say, well, we got this story taken from the viewpoint of Hans Christian Andersen. Let's do it from Kurt Vonnegut and explore this future kind of thing, and so on and so forth. So we can dance all kinds of ways with it. In regard to evaluating other people's use of it, this is the process to be able to see their chart on their chat GPT and see their question and answer, the evolution of their being. So that allows us to see that they are really reflecting and getting some insight. I have a real issue now is getting some foresight into our society. We need to have those two things, insight and foresight, because nobody's thinking 7 generations down. They're thinking the food on the table tomorrow, or maybe even today. And so on and so forth.
Kurt, if I could just take that particular point, one of the things that I found is really, really interesting is to ask, you know how on hurricanes, when hurricanes are coming, usually they show on the weather map, they show that the projection, here's the European model's got to go in this way, and the US model's got to go in some other way. Or when we project any economics things for the future, we've got best case, worst case, most likely case on the charts. When we can actually go out and say, with regards to climate, with regards to job losses and things like this, what is the likely future? And we can put a horizon on the future, but then we can go out and say, why do you think that's the future here? And we can question its weight that it's giving to a certain factor, and very often it will change its opinion based on, oh yeah, I didn't take that factor into consideration, because just because it's ChatGPT, as I said, it's going out and looking at what other humans have said to a particular situation, and it's trying to find its best answer. But it doesn't mean it's looked at all the factors. And so when you come out and say, well, wait a minute, what about this factor? Did you take that into consideration? And it says, oh no, I didn't. Oh, if I take that into consideration, I have to reevaluate my thing. In the process of going through that and learning the weighting of different factors and understanding what is likely to influence trends going on in the future, or to be able to go out and say, what were the things that influenced the trend that got us to where we are right now? I found that fascinating, going and looking at how much the population growth is to blame for the climate situation that we're in, or for the poverty situation that we see, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa, where the population has been pretty stable for the last 100 years. In sub-Saharan Africa, we've got almost a 9-fold increase in population, which has fragmented the land among smallhold farmers. So that now there's not enough land to support the number of people, or it's forcing the people to go out and destroy whatever forests are left to get more land to cultivate because of the increasing population. It's causing families not to be, or countries not to be able to educate their young, because there's the number of young are just too great relative to the GDPs of the country and so forth. But anything here, if you don't spend time just chatting with this thing, and I'll tell you, when advanced voice comes, I don't have it yet, but some people do. When that's there, where I can talk and interrupt it, and we just talk and chat like you know,
You'll be in heaven.
You know, my wife is going to kill me, because she's going to say, you never get off that thing. You're talking all day long, but you never talk. I never talk to her. But I think here getting our young people, I've promoted the idea that we should be taking children as young as 3 and 4 years old and sitting them down with AI, but in voice mode, and just let them explore. Why is the sky blue? How can birds fly? And all these different things, because we know from studies like Bloomberg studies, that children, especially from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, they hear very few words. They start school up to 2 years behind in verbal vocabulary skills or in mental maturity, just simply because they're not exposed as much as children in higher socioeconomic backgrounds, where maybe there's either a nanny, or they're in an expensive preschool, learning multiple languages before they're 5, that this would be an opportunity to really level the playing field so that these children, by the time they get to school, they have learned how to discuss, they've learned how to formulate questions and so forth. Yes, Kurt, continue.
Real quickly about that, when you talk about any country, wherever it is, when people are reading or talking or telling stories to children from the age of 0, even before, the child actually starts to put into their brain structure and the from 0 to 3 years old, when people read so many million words at least to the child or sings them, the child has about 70% more chance of success in school than anybody who doesn't. Mm-hmm. And Sam is a dear soul. He was here talking with some of the Uprising Together group that we have here in Los Angeles. So it's beautiful to have this kind of a dialogue, because we have geniuses on this call right now. And when we, let's say, mind meld a little bit, or when we have this interface between each person, then that's where the growth happens. It's that synergistic effect. And pointing out things to ChatGPT about, well, what about the effect of the transcendental meditation on making hurricanes go away from the coast at this particular point? And the research is fascinating, just like in violence and so on and so forth. We have to give the alternatives that are not out there so much and get it to be more mainstream. It's like meditation changes you inside. And if you're a prisoner in prison, you got plenty of time to meditate. And when you get out, you're a lot better and different. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting here with regards to small children. There's a lot of studies that show if you put them in front of the TV or videos, and even if it's educational programs like Sesame Street or things like this, the impact is not that great because it's not interactive. But as soon as you make it interactive, and what we're seeing now, and I showed last week, I showed that there are avatars out there now where, as far as you're concerned, it's just that human on the other side of a glass, and literally each parent could make a avatar of themselves. You just take a couple of minutes of video and it'll make an avatar of you, and you can be the one there holding all the conversations with your child, even though you're not physically present at that moment. That the AI can be explaining why the sky's blue, or explaining, and because of the visual on it, it literally has the capability to tell the child that's heading towards the stove, don't touch that, it's hot. And we see that literally already, that there are AI yoga coaches that will be able to see the positions you're doing and correct you when they're not perfect, or the like. Yes, Kurt.
You gave that reference of don't touch it, it's hot. Mm-hmm. There's a book called The Continuum Concept, and it's about a person who went down to the mountains of Sierra Nevadas of Colombia, I believe, and they went into the back country, and they found that the tribe that was up there that was hardly ever visited by anyone else than themselves, so to speak, they let their little baby children that are just crawling go right to the precipice of a big cliff. They don't even say a thing. Why? The innate senses of the human being are so tuned in to all of nature The baby sometimes will cry because it wants to alert you to something that you don't know about too. And so on and so forth.
Mhm.
A fascinating book, that.
Yeah. I was just thinking here again about the avatar of the mother or the father creating an avatar. They could actually have themselves in the avatar sitting there reading a book to the child, with the child being able to say, wait, what's that? And talk to the avatar and have the avatar react to that. So it could be reading a book, could be telling a story. It could be asking the child so that the child is doing most of the talking, and the adult is just intervening. And that could, then you can start putting in the little things like understanding what a number is, understanding
There's a
basic.
difference. There's a big, 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 big difference between a human being doing it and an avatar. It's like when they've done studies in hospitals and putting flowering plants in rooms, and people heal faster with those flowering plants or being able to look out at nature. They don't in these other rooms. And when you have a fake bush or tree or flower, it doesn't work as well. So the vibes of the human being, the vibes of a living being, and I can't say that an avatar isn't living because it's created and is moving and so on and so forth, but it doesn't have that, let's say, soul quality. Unless, of course, you get sucked into the movie Her.
Well, given the success of character AI, we can say there are hundreds of millions of people that are enjoying their version of Her right now.
So may I say something though?
Yes.
I think what we have to look at is not everything in it in entirety. We have to look at things like AI is may serve as a teaching tool, but nature can also be a teaching tool. So I think it's all about balance and variety of experiences. So for example, I'm so happy, Bill, you said about Sesame Street, and there were some other ones. I never let my daughter watch them. I just thought they were so ridiculous. But anyway, that was my own opinion. Lots of millions of parents swear by them. I personally did not want my daughter to watch a lot of TV because they called it the idiot box, and I think there was a reason why. And I didn't want my child to be an idiot. So, when she was young, we lived on a farm so that she could experience animals. She could experience water. She could experience things. And, but we also got her dirty. People are so scared of dirt. You need to be in soil. And I obviously got that because of when I was growing up, my family was very, very nature oriented. And so it was in my blood, of course. So I have to say that. But a lot of parents use TV as babysitting. But on the other hand, another friend of mine just got a ton load of funding, like from the US. She's a US citizen, but she lives in somewhere else. And she applied to teach young kids about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And she really is focused on STREAM, which includes robotics and art. And I've been working with her since 2005. And one of the reasons that she got the money was that she is developing AI-driven curriculum for STEM, and make it into games so that they're learning not just the technology, but also the concepts of STEM. And she did it with her daughter, didn't send her to school, and taught her using those technologies. And she was one of the very few people that had, from the very beginning, teaching her the whole balance. I call it the balanced learning. Like, it's not just about the 3 R's or technology. It's about balanced learning and being a person and being able to think. So you can't say that AI is going to take over if you don't let it take over. You use it in its place, like everything else. And I think that's the message that has to get out there. Like people are so fearful of AI, but then they should be fearful of too much rain and climate change too. But it's balance in everything, and being able to adapt.
Well, I think here there's going to be the challenge between the thinking of an individual person to these things and the thinking of us collectively relative to these issues, because in a company with 10,000 employees, they're going to make the decision that's in the best interest of the company, not necessarily the best interest of their employees. And then all of a sudden that individual who doesn't have the job is sitting there and they're looking at the world very differently. But it was a very interesting thought that I had as you were speaking, Joan, and that is going back to these 3 and 4 year olds. You could actually go and have the 3 or 4 year olds and say, let's make up a story, and have the 3 or 4 year olds say, yeah, you know, oh, I have this idea. There's a princess in the castle or whatever, and there's a dragon and this, and then the AI says, oh, but where did that come from? Where did that? And so the child keeps expanding on their story verbally, saying this and that, but the AI keeps remembering all the things that they already said. So the story just keeps growing and getting more complete. And then it's able to repeat back to the child the next day when they get back together and say, oh, here, you know, you got to this point. Here's what's going on. Oh, I'm really wondering what happened to that figure, that character, and where'd they go? And then it could expand on that. And the child is their imagination now is they're starting to visualize their story, because they're able to hear the pieces back of their own story and expand on them and things like this. I'm just thinking, what kind, I mean, that's just one aspect here, but what kind of an impact could this have on the child's mental maturity and development by the time they're 6 years old? It's a very, you know, we want people to be creative, but the problem we have is so many people don't have the opportunity. The reason they're put in front of that TV set is they're in a daycare where the only thing that this daycare person's got 20 children. They're of different ages and all different, and they're chasing down, and they need to just get these kids not hurting themselves. And so stick them in front of a TV set.
No, Bill, I was just talking about being at home, not the system,
No,
because
no,
I don't know anything about that. I stayed at home and had my own business so that I could look after her.
Yes,
I'm
but
just
that's what I'm
saying
saying. Not
home-based.
everybody's got that opportunity, and so the issue is here: do you just tell the child sit in a corner and stay quiet, or do you provide them something that is going to incite their imaginations and incite their thinking and their development in a somewhat orderly direction, but not specific? It will be different for every single child. And because that's what we need, even I don't care what grade you're at, or if you're in university, every single student is different. Their thinking is different, their history is different, their goals are different. And this really opens the door to evolve in every direction. And Inge, I'm going to, just before I start to you, just go to you. I just want to point out, in terms of climate part, to be able to have a child be able to walk through the forest, to be able to feel the forest, to be able to see and discuss what does it mean when the forest goes away because the people cut it down to have grass for cows. You know, and so many aspects that we can do, as long as we don't block off the idea of the human talking to the collective knowledge of humanity, because that's what the AI is. AI is labeling an individual human to communicate with the recorded, the sum of recorded knowledge of all the other humans. Yes, Inge. You're muted.
Yes, hi to you all. I hear you well, Bill, and I've been on these calls on Saturdays since the beginning, and we talk about foundational learning, and we talk about all the children missing out of education totally, you know, also on the digital speed, accelerated speed to digital learning or to AI accessibility. So I'm really puzzled. You know, we in Norway, we have this activation of especially creative people that comes from the artistic world of theater, of people that is dedicated to the arts and creativity and critical thinking. You know, this from the head to hand feeling to things, the way to really accelerate imagination and to really get the children's fingers and hands dirty, to be grounded in bacteria and the soil. So I am thinking that you're touching extreme positive approach, and I can see your fascination in your eyes. But I'm a little bit like, hey, let's slow down a bit, you know. And coming from a system thinking perspective, if you have things galloping out of control without legislation or any kind of framework of legislation towards AI, it's having the unintended consequences that is like very dangerous. That's what I see. And that's why I brought Karen Brown into this call as well today. And we're really looking at it from a Californian standpoint on how we can bring a different narrative, a disruptive narrative, and more, and to engage differently towards Climate Week in New York with education profoundly different. So I think the people in this call, maybe we are all hyper positive AI, and we can see how fast we can learn and test the knowledge and speed up our own fake news, our own fake articles that we kind of take from AI or ChatGPT and everything. But I'm a little bit critical. So what's your perspective of being critical on this and how we can have legislative justice?
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. However, we have to watch how we're doing it. Europe is killing itself by taking its very go slow attitude towards AI right now. And until recently, I understand some of the students in Italy were complaining that they could not even access AI outside of school, let alone in school, because it was blocked for anybody under the age of 18 for a while. This gets back to, in the end of the day, if we're not careful, we're going to get a battle between the humanists and the rest of the world. But having said that, in our last two meetings where we looked at professions and we looked at the likelihood of job loss, and the estimates right now that I'm getting is that we could see between 98 and 100% loss of jobs for humans within the next 5 to 10 years. And it's expected to start happening within 2 years. And humans are just no longer going to have value in our economic systems and so many things, because right now it's a capitalistic, profit-oriented world. And if they're estimating that humanoid robots within 5 years, the cost per hour of their work and working faster than the average human and better than the average human could be as low as $1 an hour. And there's some people estimating it could go down to 10 cents an hour. So, you know, the only way the human can compete is if they are just living in abject poverty. So we get into the issue of universal basic incomes. And again, does that get financed by taxes, by the people who pay taxes looking for every excuse they can to pay less taxes and have smaller universal basic incomes, and in the people dependent. And then the whole idea is that the Southern Hemisphere, impoverished countries, developing countries, literally will be written off. The odds are there will be no efforts made to close the digital divide to them. There will be no efforts made to provide any kind of aid. They will be basically, the human race will just split into two classes, whereby the haves class ends up viewing the other class just as another species. So yes, we have huge risks. And so I'm going into another meeting right after this one where we're discussing how do we avoid these really bad consequences that could happen in that regard. But this gets back to the idea between the teacher who's sitting there and looking and saying, you can't trust students. They're gonna cheat anytime you give them an opportunity to cheat. They're gonna cheat, and saying, how do we get students to be excited about learning because they're able to learn it, whatever comes into their brain. And I'd like to know, how does that work? And they're able to use these tools to do that. Because, one of the biggest reasons we have our education system worldwide is horrendous when we look at the percentage of secondary school students that of those that go to secondary school that really don't get any kind of an effective education and come out saying, I guess I'm just not academically inclined, because by grade 5, we've already taught the majority of the students, even in a country like the United States, that they're not good. We keep saying, no, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. So we allow that right now in the United States. Fewer than half of fourth graders in the United States are at grade level. And we have more than 10% of the schools, the elementary schools in New Jersey, we have 73,000 students in those schools. And those schools have generally never managed to get even 10% of their students at grade level. And so we have dropout rates of 50%. We have the majority of students in the entire United States can barely read. The average knowledge education attainment in the United States for all adults is 5th grade. That's the average or median. I don't know if it's the median or the average. So we have to look at those things, and I just look and I say, the number one thing is, can we get people to be independent thinkers? Can we get people to be independent learners? Can we get people to have confidence in their ability to learn and confidence in their own thinking? And I think AI can contribute to this in a terrific way. Again, we just have to stop calling it intelligence, because it's not intelligence. It's just being able to leverage the collective knowledge of all the humans that have lived or are living, whose knowledge and experiences have been captured. And in the future going forward, the cases where devices have observed events and we're able to learn from that as well. Self-driving cars is a perfect example of that. So it's a really could be a hugely dangerous situation. But the more every human can think and doesn't say, I'm not capable of thinking, so I'm going to listen to that demagogue up there that's saying that he knows everything and I don't need to think for myself. If we can get so that doesn't happen, then the chances that we're going to be able to use AI to create a world of abundance where every human has all the basic needs, the health needs, the food needs, the education access, all those things available to everyone. We're not going to get there the way we're going right now. Yes, Karen.
First, hello everyone. I'm in California and I'm not properly coffeed, so please forgive me. All right, so I'm on the Los Angeles GAP committee, which is the government policy committee for SAG-AFTRA. And I have been working with a gentleman who I've brought into this room, also Matthew Tabor, who was highly instrumental in getting the Elvis law passed in Tennessee to protect artists. And and Matthew's now raising his hand. And what we're dealing with AI is it's really taking tremendous jobs away from the industry. But besides taking the jobs away, there are things that are crucial to be aware of. And Inger and Matthew and our buddy Eric, also on the GAP committee, is we're working on a campaign right now where we found that 1/3 of the climate posts that are out on social media and articles, etc., are utilizing AI for a false narrative. We are also finding that okay, I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios. You have a mom in Minnesota, and somebody calls the school, and they have used AI to distort the voice so that it sounds exactly like the mom. And that AI voice says they're picking up the kid an hour early from school, blah, blah, blah. The mom comes to pick up the kid later. It wasn't her voice. And where's the child? There are apps being used right now in the healthcare system. This came up in legislation in Sacramento a few weeks ago. The nurses are using these apps. They're taking all these details down from patients and their names and everything and all of their symptoms and medications, etc. And these apps are not HIPAA compliant.
Mhm.
So all of the app is actually learning from the person's issues, but is also, they have their name. So there are things out there that are so dangerous that we have to put guardrails on, with legislation on these tools. Do I absolutely agree? It's a phenomenal learning tool, no question. But without these protections in place, we're 2 years down the road, we're gonna be in so much trouble.
You're right here when you say 2 years. In 1 to 2 years, if you take a look at how much of the advances, especially in humanoid robots, of what in January, if you had asked, okay, how long is it going to take to see certain capabilities in humanoid robots, I would have said at least 5 to 10 years. And it didn't take 5 to 10 months. It took less than 5 months.
Now, I'm working with a team out of Vancouver that's working with robotics right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
So there are, yeah.
But
We're in trouble.
here's the issue. The issue is Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, who is a very socially inclined person. I don't know if he's heading it up or he's part of a project to be able to create military autonomous drones under the price of $500. To get the price under $500, that can go and destroy cities or $1 million military hardware. There are people out there looking to create using agent technology to create robotic devices that will literally hunt a person down and kill them. You can specify who the person is, and it won't give up until it kills them. So they can't hide. No matter what it is, it'll figure out where they're at. It'll find them, and it will kill them. So
See, there's a movie like this, Bill.
Well, it's not a movie. It's reality.
I know. It's
And
terrifying.
yeah, but here's the problem. The United States here said, "Oh, we don't want China to be a competitor, so we're going to block the sale of our best AI chips. We're going to make it so China can't get access to these chips." And what we basically did is instead of going and saying, let's keep a level playing field because we're making it the path of least resistance for them to at least use our chips, which means we got a level playing field. We sort of forced them to go out and develop their own. Now, as of just 3 months ago, the reports were that China was 10 years, it would take at least 10 years for China to catch up with where we are in our AI chips. About a month or two ago, China introduced, I think it's Huawei, their latest new chip series, and it's only 2 years behind now. So what we are seeing here is as long as we have countries, as long as we have so-called patriotism and nationalism, you can't afford to be second in a lot of the technologies. So the technologies are being put forward. I used to head up cloud technology at Chase Manhattan Bank. And in the same department we were part of was the fraud prevention part. And one of the things that we're seeing is with cybersecurity, our best chances to defend against cybersecurity is AI. But the best chance for the people trying to misuse and
Right. Also AI.
bypass our security is AI. But the things we can't afford to slow down on those things, and this applies to so many other aspects. As far as the jobs go, we can say from a societal perspective, from a humanity perspective, oh, we should protect the jobs. We should protect our current way of life. Well, I just recall back in the early 1900s when diesel trains engines came along, and the unions forced the train operators to keep the firemen on every train. That's the person that shoveled the coal into the steam engines, but there weren't any steam engines anymore there, so they just sat there and got paid. And as a result, we don't have any train system in the United States because we made it impossible for them to compete. And anybody here where in any field, creativity field, if you're thinking here, anybody in the music or the videography field and so forth, to say, oh no, we're going to have these regulations to protect them, is going to lose, because you're going to get little startups that are going to go and say, hey, we're just improving our productivity. So we're creating outputs that bypass this. It's just going to cause the people that are hamstrung to try to protect their workers, to cause them to go out of business, and all the workers lose their jobs. So I think and you got the competitive factor. Right now, the major AI manufacturers or producers are blocking Europe. They're not allowing Europe to use their AI, because they're saying, Europe, yeah, you're making it so it's not worth our while. We're gonna block you. So you've got China, you've got the United States, you've got a handful of other countries that are racing forward and making progress, and you've got Europe that are on their way back to the Stone Age, or at least it's going to feel that way as the gap grows, unless Europe changes its approach.
Yeah.
So
Bill, I brought Matthew Tabron. Excuse me, I don't want to just interrupt, but Matthew was instrumental in getting the Elvis law passed in Tennessee. And he is tracking presently all the bills around the country and in California to see what's passing, what's not, et cetera, et cetera. And I would just love him to chime in if that's okay.
Yes, Matthew, please.
Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you all. I am so glad that you all are doing this, and I definitely wish to hear more about what you all are doing. I've heard a lot about you already from Karen, but I look forward to speaking to you all more. Yeah, so I actually have a little congressional background. I used to work in the United States Congress. I worked for a member of the House. I also worked on the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee of the United States Senate in 2008. In 2016, after DC had killed my wallet, I was back in Nashville, Tennessee, where I am currently, and I worked on a primary care bill for the state of Tennessee, got that passed into law, no problem, by Governor Haslam at the time in 2016. And I then gave up politics for Lent completely, which pleased my priest, but I gave it up completely, or so I thought. And then late last year, I teamed up with a person by the name of Eric, who Karen was referring to, and I teamed up with a couple other people in SAG-AFTRA to start working on and tracking AI bills across the country, including Congress. And we even created our own tracker. And so I update that tracker on a daily basis that keeps track of select AI bills, I should say. There's hundreds and hundreds of bills that have gone through various legislatures this year, but there's only about, first of all, I don't have the manpower to track them all, but I'm tracking very select ones. One of the ones that we tracked, the very first one that we tracked, as Karen mentioned, is a rock star out of the state of Tennessee by the name of Elvis. So Elvis was the first of his kind to be signed into law by Governor Lee. He is a pure anti-AI law. He is the very first in the country to be passed. He was not only passed, he was unanimously passed, which is completely rare in politics these days to see a bill completely unanimously passed. Elvis passed unanimously, which Tennessee is a very divisive state. So that was absolutely a miracle to see Elvis be passed into law. So who knew that this whole time that Elvis is actually an acronym? Elvis stands for Ensuring Likeness, Voice, and Image Security. And so what he does is he specifically updates Tennessee's what's called a right of publicity law. So right of publicity laws are very important in the state. It's how Scarlett Johansson can actually single-handedly take down OpenAI in one full swoop. It's because with Scarlett and her situation, OpenAI, by doing the crud that they did to her, violate California's very extremely strict right of publicity law. And so Scarlett, if she was to sue, could take down OpenAI single-handedly in one full swoop because of that law. In Tennessee, that's what Elvis does. Elvis does the exact same thing that the California law. Elvis is now one of 13 state laws that protect your voice and your likeness. And so that's what Elvis does. In California, just making the story short here, California has really come alive when it comes to passing anti-AI bills. California, as of August 31st, last week, they passed 8 major anti-AI laws. And so meaning that they passed the legislature. Those bills are now on their way to Governor Haslam. The Governor Newsom, sorry. It's Saturday, I apologize. Those bills are now on the way to Governor Newsom. And so 7 of the 8 bills now have what's called a majority, veto-proof majority vote, which means that they have reached enough votes to override any potential veto. So California is about to make some major history when it comes to the anti-AI laws. I will say this too. So in addition to working with and tracking these bills, my day job is actually in healthcare. Healthcare here in Tennessee is the biggest. We are known here in Nashville as the healthcare capital of the world. So we take healthcare extremely seriously. We have over 600 plus healthcare companies here alone here in Nashville, including Vandy. And healthcare is obviously jumping right into AI, and it's actually a very dangerous thing. Healthcare companies have been caught, health insurance companies, I should say, have recently been caught too as well, kicking people off the rolls by using AI to do it. The 4 major for-profit insurance companies have all been caught using AI algorithms that kick people off the rolls. And now the feds are involved with that as well.
Excuse me, Matthew, because I just we're actually over the time limit for our meeting.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I don't want to stop this, but I do want to bring up the thing. We started this meeting today talking about the fact that educators generally have been negative to AI because students were using AI to write their essays, to go out and define project goals and ideas for projects and stuff like that, to do the research for them. And we spent pretty much the whole meeting talking about how we almost need to get rid of the educators, the human educators, rather than to get rid of the AI, because the reason they're against that is because we've structured our education to do a very bad job, because we focus on teaching rather than learning. And when we focus on AI, we can focus on the learning aspect. So when we look here at the things you're pointing out, the misuse, these are just like the bad actors that are going out there and calling up people and saying, oh, I'm going to block your access to your hard drive or whatever, or I'm using AI to break into, you steal your information from the bank, all those types of things. It's important that we pass laws against crime. But to go out there and say, AI, Time Magazine a year ago, a little over, maybe it's a year and a half now, came out with a special issue called The End of Humanity because of AI. But in all the articles, it pointed out it was not AI that was going to eliminate humanity. It was the human bad actors that were going to misuse AI that were the problem. And I think it's really important here. There are people, you may not have been in the call in the beginning when I pointed out here that I attended a event by a major civil rights group in the United States about 40 years ago, where the leader told me the biggest problem in the world was the invention of electricity, because it enabled people to go to sleep and wake up on other than when the sun rose and sank. She was telling me about how the world was such a better place when everybody lived in grass huts. And I sort of reminded her, yeah, you mean when people died at age 30. So I think the thing that we're looking at here is, yes, we want to be totally aware. I think there's going to be massive job layoffs. I think we're going to have a huge problem with inequality in the world. I think here the Southern Hemisphere is going to pretty much be a write-off. I don't think anybody's going to even try anymore to help them. I think that we are going to see right now in the United States, we have to look at in 2001, we had four states in 2001 where more than 50% of the children qualified for a free or subsidized lunch. In other words, lived in poverty. In 2011, just 10 years later, it had more than quadrupled to 17 states with more than 50% of the children living in poverty. By 2014, it was 22 states, and that's where I stopped tracking. It's probably somewhere in the mid 30s now of states with more than 50% of the children. The United States, we do not have a single state in the United States where even half of fourth graders are effective readers. And so we have all these issues and problems that are going to be tremendously exacerbated if we don't find a way to have a peaceful transition to a laborless economy, what they're calling a post-labor economy, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen right now. You see in the artist world, more and more of the people who are coming out defending AI are the artists themselves who have learned that they can greatly improve their own creativity and their own productivity by utilizing AI. And you can't protect that, because the value of art is in the eyes of the beholder. And so there's just so many of these issues, and we want to keep the discussion here to discussing how do we use AI. We can, and 100% behind you on blocking the criminals. If those kids that go out there and say it's a lot of fun for us to go out there and take over a power plant or destroy something like that, I think the penalties have to be greatly increased against cybercrime, and they have to be treated almost like murderers. We could actually do with a good reduction, culling of our populations. But in the meantime here, the efforts to block it, we're just putting ourselves at risk the more we try, because the people who are determined to do crime and do bad things with AI are going to find the ways. And what we're doing is we're just hamstringing the value use of the value that we can get out of AI. That's sort of my take on that. Anybody else want to voice in on that? But again, as I said in the beginning of the call, We do not want to be lamenting decline of humanity. That's not the purpose of us on the call. We don't want to be with wishful thinking that we wish the world was different than it is. We have other calls for that, by the way, because our whole club is dedicated to the idea, let's set our goals based on what's needed, and then we'll pursue those. But the purpose here is really discuss how we could get positive value out of spreading AI and getting more people to reduce their fears, because many of the fears that average people have with regards to AI is definitely misplaced. So we need to get that so the discussion is on the real issues and not on issues that are based on fake news. It's sort of like when we say here, crime is so rampant in the U.S., violent crime and whatnot. I lived in the 60s, so I can tell you here, we're doing pretty good right now, but everybody has the impression here that you can't let your kid walk to school anymore because it's so dangerous nowadays. Anyway, any other final comments that anybody wants to make? Because
I'd like to just make a quick comment that change is always, people seem to be fearful, but it can be exciting. And it's all about how we perceive it and learn about it and how we use it and putting things in its place. So criminals, whether it's technology or a gun or whatever, they're criminals.
Yes.
And so we can't get obsessed with our lives for that. We can just be cautious and be aware of what can happen, but don't live our lives in fear. Like, crimes around us, so is nature, so is good people, so is bad people. It's just how it is. And in terms of employment, I mean, I'll talk about art because I'm an artist as well. How I've tried to approach it, especially people say, oh, people are going to steal your art, because I'm very free with my information. And I said, that's fine. But I build relationships and commissions with potential clients. And so I have a personal relationship with them. And, I guess what I'm trying to say is just build your life around things that are happening and not be fearful of it.
Yeah. And I think here, the AI can do so much good in healthcare, especially. We can look and say, oh, look at these people. They captured the information with the names and all of this stuff. You know what? But if that information turns around and ends up saving tens of thousands of lives because the AI was able to figure something out from that information, the fact that it was done in the wrong way, I would sort of say, my general approach to life, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. And when we look at Silicon Valley, it's that way. Having said that, however, we can't go through blind to the negatives that could happen. The negatives that could happen if bad actors ended up controlling the world, or the negatives that could happen if we get 1/10 of 1% of the people with smart weapons that take control of the world, or that we go and say they're the people that own all the AI and own all the factories, who are going to end up owning all the land, that the rest, the 99% of the rest of the world population has to basically do whatever the top 1/10 of 1% says and wants. So yeah, we have to be aware those things can happen. Look at what are the sequences of things that could cause them to happen, and we need to be thinking about what are alternatives that we could get to a world that is beneficial for all without violence. Hopefully. Okay. Yes, Kurt.
There's where the structure of the new society needs to be shown to the old society right now. And we have not yet set up that structure.
Mm-hmm.
When we do, because of maybe this cadre of people, or another one that you may be involved with, people will have a place to look to, a roadmap, so to speak, for the change. And that's what I've been working on a bit in the peacemaker circles and so on.
Whoever doesn't know about it, there's a thing called the Commons Cluster of the NGO Major Group at the United Nations, who are exploring ways for that new economy and new society that could end up replacing the current economy if that collapses as a result of the job situations that are coming along as we get into a post-labor economy. That's the meeting I'm going to right after this. I think, Lloyd, you're going to be there as well, right? And so you might want to look up that. There's a maybe I'll post that or get the head of that group maybe to attend one of our meetings and tell us a little bit about where they're at and what they're doing. So, but again, we keep the first step to solving a problem is to be aware. So we have to be aware of the dangers, but then the key thing here is that there are so many great benefits that we can do, and we need to take advantage of those. One thing we didn't talk about here is if in 2 years or 3 years that 50% of the jobs that normally require a college education are no longer there. That means there's no entry-level jobs for 50% or more of college people coming out of college. What's that going to do to the university education from that side, from the demand side? From the supply side, both the presidents, I've heard the president of MIT and Harvard at a World Economic Forum session a couple of years ago, saying that the model of education at university levels that exist today will be gone within a very few years. There's a good chance that anybody who's a senior in secondary school today, who's planning to go on to college for 4 years, there's a good chance that their colleges will not survive long enough for them to graduate. And we just need to think about that a little bit, what that means. So I thank everybody for the attention, and I thank particularly that we had so many people speaking up and giving us their thoughts. I would like even more next time, if you could take just a second before you leave and just in the chat, write your feelings about this session that we just had, and how we might be able to make it better, or topics that you would like to see us add. We talk about all topics of how we can contribute to making a better world. But education is a major one that we talk about, because that's considered to be the key to closing the gaps, whether it's the education gaps, the economic gaps, or other gaps between the developing and the underprivileged world and the developed world. But we have climate as an issue. All the major issues that the SDGs at the UN, they were set up as because the feeling are those are the major problems facing the world, and if we can do something about those, that we'll have a better world. So, but please take just a couple of minutes, add your thoughts. In case you didn't get a direct invite from me to this session, if you want to include your WhatsApp number, I can add you to the mailing list. It's not a mailing list for email. I've pretty much given up on email. I do everything through Telegram or WhatsApp. But provide that and I will add you to the list. Okay, I'm going to leave this up for just a couple of minutes to let you add comments if you'd like. And I look forward to seeing you. We normally meet every 2 weeks. The last few weeks we've been meeting every week, simply because there's so much new information coming along, and we want to understand what risks they might bring with them, as well as what benefits we might be able to leverage. Also, for those of you in Rotary, There is the Rotary. We have a artificial intelligence Rotary action group that I'm part of. I'm also part of the basic education and literacy action group, which are open to Rotarians and non-Rotarians, and we try to bring together people around the world who are interested in making a difference. In fact, the tagline of our club, our Rotary Club, is that we seek to be the go-to place for those who are crazy enough to think they can change the world, the whole world, and daring enough to try. Because that's the key thing, is not just going, oh my God, the sky's falling, we can't do anything, but we look to see and find ways that we can make a difference. For example, we have a concept for a plan to try to eradicate illiteracy in schools, where right now 1 out of every 2 fourth graders in schools around the world is basically functionally illiterate. How we could totally eliminate illiteracy in schools worldwide before the end of next year. We have a concept for being able to call for a worldwide readathon, asking students during 1 month to be declared the Read for a Better World month, to read 40 minutes a day for every day for that 1 month, with the hopes that we can get 50% of all primary and secondary students worldwide to read that 40 minutes a day, or on average. And if we can get 500 million students participating in that, that would give us 10 billion hours read. And readathons work that we try to get sponsors, Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, to get local sponsors that would make a small donation for every hour that the students in a particular classroom or school read during that month. And that major foundations might do that on a national level or even a worldwide level. And if we could achieve just 20 cents raised per hour read, in the United States, we've seen schools that average $5, but we're going to have places like Malawi, Africa, or Nepal, where we might only be able to get a penny or two. But if we could average 20 cents by 20 billion hours read, so that's $2 billion with a B that we could raise in just a little over a month. And that would be sufficient to be able to get 10 million plus students who are on the streets in cities and places around the world, to be able to get them into school and to feed them in school for an entire year. So to have a major impact. Plus the reading in the readathon, of course, improves people's reading skills. So it's these kinds of crazy ideas. There are Rotary clubs where the coin of the realm is they do fundraising, they try to raise money. The coin of the realm in our club is ideas. We try to find ideas that we believe can have impact in the world and try to figure out how do we get those ideas implemented. So if any of that sounds interesting to you and you'd like to perhaps explore that, either send me a WhatsApp or let me know, and I'd be happy to send you information how you can become a member of our club. Because we don't do fundraising, our club's dues are among the least in the world, because we really only charge what we have to pass through to Rotary International and to the Rotary District as membership dues. So with that,
there's a new funding idea that I just put into the chat. If you want to look at it, see about that particular funding method, and it's really advanced and looks like it's going to be able to fund these kind of efforts that we are talking about. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. The key thing to remember is, like I said, we want to make sure that we're doing meaningful things. Rotary does about 1 million projects every decade. If we count all NGOs, we do more than 1 million projects every year. If we look back over the last 10 years or last several decades, where we've got tens of millions of projects that have been completed, we have to take a look and say, what have we accomplished? How much has have the problems been reduced because of all those efforts? And unfortunately, we have to see almost none. Just this last summer during the high-level political forums at the UN, It was announced that only 17% of the 169 SDG targets for major problems in the world have even a chance of being achieved by 2030. And 50% are far behind what's needed, and fully 30% have made zero improvement or have actually fallen backwards since 2015 when they were announced. And unfortunately, the ones that have made no progress or falling back are the most important ones. The 17% that have a chance, for the most part, are relatively unimportant goals. So we try to look and say, if we're going to do something that's meaningful, we have to be able to see the impact in the World Bank statistics. If it's not impacting the World Bank statistics, we're not doing what's needed. And so we have to really, we see ourselves as a combination of a think tank and an influencer group to be able to bring about change that would be significant. I have, for example, here some wristbands. We have our Dare to Be Great, SDGs Now, and these were just for Africa. They say member of Vision Africa 2030. This was the youth group we were working with in Africa, the Dare to Be Great youth group. They came up with this idea for these wristbands, and we actually have a quote for 50 million of these just for Africa, because that's the scales that we have to be thinking at if we want to make a difference in the world. So, and we believe we can. So with that there, I think we've got enough time for people to add their comments. So I will end this meeting now. So ding, I now declare this Dare to Be Great eClub meeting on 7 September 2024 to be ended. Thank you, everyone. I think
You get to say
Bye-bye.
au revoir with the peace salute.
Yeah.
We see the it is. We see the love everywhere, and we share the love everywhere by doing this. Doing peace. And you throw the love out to the world, and it creates peace.
So
Thank you, Kurt.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Namaste.